Hi, I'm Doug O'Brien. Welcome to the Essential Coaching Skills Podcast. My guest today is Peter Blum. Peter lives in Woodstock, New York, not far from where I am up here in the Hudson Valley of New York. His work for almost 4 decades is focused on 2 areas, neo-Ericksonian hypnosis and shamanic sound healing. His first book, Transonics, The Vital Link Between Sound Healing and Hypnosis, reflects his pioneering work in these 2 fields, both separately and where they overlap. His new book, What is Your BS? Exploring Belief Systems Through Hypnosis and NLP, is the subject of our discussion today. I want to find out all about it, and I'm anxious for you to hear all about it as well. So let's get started. You are listening to the Essential Coaching Skills Podcast, a show devoted to uncovering the systems and the secrets that set the best apart, where you learn how to take your coaching clients to the next level, while you grow the coaching practice of your dreams. So sit back and relax, or sit up and get excited. Either way, you might want to pay attention. This could be important. Peter!
Hey, Doug.
How's it going?
Good. My screen says hi to your screen.
Well, thank you. My screen is very happy to see your screen. Hey, Peter, you know, we're not far away, and yet this is the first time I've seen you in a long time. So I don't know what's up with that.
Yeah.
It's also interesting. I was reading your bio recently, and I guess I'd forgotten that you and I have trained with a lot of the same people, like Annie Linden and Steve Goldstone and Paul Carter. That's pretty amazing.
Yeah. Well, you know the phrase, we went to the different schools together.
No, I don't. Do you know that phrase?
But no, I mean, it's interesting because our paths really never crossed that we know of.
That we know of, yeah.
But they might have. We might have been in the same class. I mean, I came into the field of hypnosis 84, 85. Yep. And the first fellow who trained me, a brilliant student of John Grinder's, one of the originators of Neuro-Linguistic programming, was a friend of mine in Woodstock named Richard Zarrow. And Richard, after training me, encouraged me to go and find other people to learn from as well. And so I had come across the New York Training Institute for NLP, and they seemed to be offering state-of-the-art trainings, you know, the cream of the cream in the area in NLP and hypnosis. And so there I went. And that was Annie Linden was the founder, and Steve Goldstone was an assistant there. And you and I both went to the residential 7 or 10-day training on Cape Cod.
Yep,
every summer.
Right,
and,
but I think we were different years because I think I would have remembered you. I'm just guessing that I would have.
Possible. I wasn't as you know, ubiquitous then as I am now.
Does it hurt much?
Only when I laugh.
Well, then it's constantly hurting, I'm sure.
A lot, yeah. But we shared that also, you know, the use of humor, how important it is, right?
Yeah, absolutely. It's humor, storytelling, and music.
Yes, all the overlaps.
Yeah. Really interesting stuff. And I loved your book on transonics. Absolutely loved it because I love the use of music and sound baths and sound healing in trance and that sort of stuff. And
that book evolved from being encouraged by an angel who came into my life. I don't know if I ever told you that story, but this woman showed up.
Don't know that story.
Yeah, she showed up. She was a sound healer from Puerto Rico who was living in Woodstock, and she was an artist, also a visual artist, painter. And we connected, and I invited her to come over and do some work with, you know, to hang out, trade secrets. You bring your bowl, I'll bring mine, and we'll see what happens. And very lovely woman. And she said, you know, I went to California and I spent thousands of dollars on a training in sound healing. And I didn't learn what you're doing. You're doing different stuff. And you should write a book. And I said, oh, well, yeah, but there's so many books out there already. What would I, what could I add to it? Now, it's always a thought in the back of my head.
Mm-hmm.
He said, well, I think, you have something unique to offer, and I will help you.
Nice.
I will offer to meet with you once a week and go over what you've written with you and give you suggestions and feedback.
Wow, that is so generous. Wow.
I mean, that's why I say she was an angel.
Yeah.
And she took me along to a certain point as it sort of defined itself in my head. What is it that I have that is kind of unique? I mean, there were books on sound healing. There were books on hypnosis. As far as I knew, no one had written one on both. And since I'm deeply involved in both fields, that's what sort of began to evolve. I had been going for years to hypnosis conference and carrying the message of sound healing, how important it is to incorporate sound in your practice, whether it's pre-recorded sound or tuning forks or chanting or drumming. What I began to notice over the last 15 years was a huge explosion of interest in sound healing. So then I took on the job, like now I'm going to bring the message back the other direction and teach the sound healers the importance of understanding hypnosis. Because when you're doing stuff with a gong or with a drum or chanting, you and the people around you are experiencing a hypnotic state. So why not see it through that lens and be able to use it, augment it? So that's where that book came from.
Very cool.
Yeah.
And about that, just real quickly, because I know we want to talk about your new book.
Yeah.
I think that's really, really good because, with sound and other experiential things that are nonverbal, people have a chance to make their own associations without people being told. And what's also great about that, and that's a very Ericksonian thing, that they make their own healing.
Yes.
The healing comes from within them. We don't tell them what to do. We don't give them the suggestions. It's not the old-fashioned hypnosis where you swing the watch and say, you are going into trance and I will tell you what to do, and you'll do what I say. It's not that. It's about creating an environment where they discover for themselves what's important to them and associate. So with the nonverbal stuff, the sound healing or experiential things, like Erickson is always telling people to go climb Squaw Peak or whatever, those experiences are so rich because they involve our bodies, our five senses, their experiences. And, the old saying is true. We learn from our experiences.
Yeah.
And the advantage of hypnosis, and where I really like you saying, let's teach the sound healers how to use hypnosis. The advantage of hypnosis is that it kind of guides the learning, because you can learn lots of different things from an experience. Some of them might be good. Some of them might be bad, like you could fail at a certain thing you're trying to learn. Maybe trying to learn a new instrument or something like that, and you have frustrations in doing that, and you're like, oh, I've just learned I'm not cut out for this.
Yeah.
So you've learned something from your mistakes, but is it the best thing to learn? So hypnosis helps you to guide the learning, if you will, from the experiential things.
I agree. Everything you said, I agree.
All right. I'm glad I said it then.
Yeah.
So what is your BS?
What is your BS? It's, I like playing with TLAs, 3-letter anagrams. TLA, which
TLA is 3-letter anagrams?
Yeah, TLA is a
make that
3-letter anagram for 3-letter anagrams. No, I don't. Gen X and Gen Z and Gen Y make this stuff up. I'm an old man.
First I'd heard that, so
I find it, and so things like LMK, let me know.
Yeah.
And they're from people texting on phones and they don't want to write. So LOL, which I used to think was lots of love. And someone said, no, it means laugh out loud. Okay. But those things, and BS we use all the time. That's used in our common parlance as short for bullshit. So I thought, yes, excuse me.
That's not what you're meaning here, though.
No, I'm using it because I'm asking people as soon as I meet them, what are your belief systems? Because I think a lot of people may not even be consciously aware of what their belief systems are.
Right.
And they're, here's the book here, and there's a nice cover, and underneath it is the subtitle, Exploring Belief Systems Through Hypnosis and NLP. And there's a section in here where I quote a man who's done a great deal to popularize neuro-linguistic programming, which is Tony Robbins.
I've heard of him, yeah.
You've heard of him, right?
Yeah.
He's a great popularizer, and he has a title in Unlimited Power entitled a chapter entitled "The 7 Lies of Success," and in it there's a wonderful little paragraph. He says, "Our beliefs are specific, consistent organizational approaches to perception. They're the fundamental choices we make about how to perceive our lives and thus how to live them. So the first step toward excellence is to find the beliefs that guide us toward the outcomes we want." You have to find the beliefs that support your outcomes, the beliefs that get you where you want to go. And often people aren't there. I have a photo on my wall. I'm not going to turn the camera now, but it's a picture of an iceberg. And I often use that to make a point to my clients, because what you see it from the level of the surface of the ocean, and you can see what's above the proverbial tip of the iceberg, which appears very large when you're in an ocean liner. Right. What you don't see, which is far bigger, and is the part that's below. And so the analogy there is what we see is our conscious mind. And what we don't see, which is much bigger, is the unconscious mind. And, I believe that one of the great contributions that Dr. Milton Erickson made was reversing the trend that was around in psychology and psychiatry stemming from Freud, that the unconscious was dangerous. Right. It was a snake pit. All the kinds of stuff not fit for prime time, that, right. Yeah. And Erickson turned it around and he said, it's a vast treasure chest filled with all kinds of experiences and resources and potentials that you can tap into. Yeah. And that all of our choices, most of them are made at an unconscious level. So
when you get to exploring the belief systems, the BS, through hypnosis and NLP, you actually literally ask the question out loud, like, what are your belief systems? That's the first thing.
There's many ways to ask a question. I may not use that phrase, beliefs. I could say that, but I often would say, well, do you believe that you came here incarnated with a purpose? That's a belief that a person may or may not have. And for some people, they find it very useful. I can't prove that it's true. I find it useful for myself to believe that I came here specifically to do certain things in this incarnation.
Right. Now, if I may interrupt you for a moment there, yeah. Peter Blum of Woodstock, New York. That sounds like a very Woodstock question. Do you believe that we were incarnated with a purpose to be?
Right. Well, I'm practicing in Woodstock, and so I have to know my audience.
Okay.
So for someone else, I might say, do you believe that you are cursed?
Oh.
Do you believe that you were born under a bad sign? That you have terrible luck in this life?
Okay. And you ask these questions like from the outset of your sessions? You don't even say like, what are you here for? Like, what's your...
No. It's a matter of building rapport. All right. We agree. First thing you got to do is establish rapport, gather information. I have a 2-page form that people fill out.
Okay, good.
And within it are revealed some of their beliefs.
Sure, of course.
I mean, some of it is just factual information. Where do you live? Are your parents alive or dead? Are you taking medications? Are you in therapy? Have you ever been hospitalized, in a psych ward? Have you ever attempted or thought of attempting suicide? Those are important things that I want to know.
Yeah.
Then there are more questions like, do you meditate? Do you pray? Do you believe in God? These will lead to uncovering belief systems, right?
Okay.
And in and of themselves, they're not limited to being in a woo-woo place like Woodstock. These are questions I can ask anyone, anywhere. And I'm not advocating that they should or shouldn't. It's just helping me understand who they are so I can speak their language.
Yeah.
Right? If the person goes, I'm an atheist, no, I'm not going to talk to them about, God or their higher power.
Or their incarnation in the
Yeah.
Good. Yeah. Excellent. Yeah, because it's really important. Obviously, we know this. You know this. Everybody probably listening knows this too, that everybody's different and we have to respect the individual that we're working with. Erickson said everyone is as individual as their own thumbprint. And so the great power of Ericksonian hypnosis and what we call Neo-Ericksonian hypnosis is that tapping into the individuality of that person and helping them find their own answers. And that's, yeah.
So like we talked about Yogi Berra earlier, certain phrases are attributed to him that he may or may not have said, but they might as well have been. And it's similar to Erickson. We don't know what he actually said a lot of times. Allegedly, he said, for every person that walks into my office, I invent a different psychotherapy.
Yeah, I think actually I remember that quote. I think you probably did say that. I'm not sure
or something very similar to that. So there's the idea of not, you have a plan. I have a general structure. And as an improvising musician, I give myself the same permission in a session with a client to do what is called for in that moment with that particular person.
Absolutely.
Which will never be exactly the same.
Never be exactly the same, for sure. For sure. Hey, so Peter, your first book, Transonics, taught a lot about music and sound and healing and states like this. What sort of things will people be able to learn and take away from your new book, this book about belief systems? How would a coach listening to this Essential Coaching Skills podcast, how would they benefit from reading your book?
Okay. First, let me give a little bit of the context of how it came to be born.
Okay.
I told the story of how Transonics came to being. I was writing articles for a professional journal for several years, a quarterly journal called Unlimited Human. And they kind of gave me carte blanche, write whatever you want. So I took the bit and ran with it. And I would come up with titles like Hypnosis Are Us or Save the Last Trance for Me. And I had fun with it, and there was a limit. It was because they, about 2,000 words. So they were all about the same length. I'd had experience way, way long time ago as a newspaper journalist. So I'm comfortable with writing a certain length of article, and you kind of learn quickly how to get to the point. So each one of these little articles was sufficient unto itself. And after some time, I had psychics telling me for years, you've got a book in you. Write the damn book. And I thought maybe it was Transonics, but I realized that had a kind of, I was glad I did it. It had a very niche market. These articles, I thought, really could be of use as I think they're entertaining. There's a compound word called edutainment. Yeah. Educational and entertaining, right? And you want to put them together so that it's not, the best learning. I studied with a fella back in the 90s who was going for his doctorate in brain physiology. And David Jubb, I don't know if you ever encountered him in New York. Okay. And he said, learning happens best in the brain when states of pleasure and interest are elicited. So, yeah. So anytime you want to impart information, put it in a story form. You and I know that, right? Stories get people's attention. So many of these were little stories. A story about how I worked with a guy who was an amateur golfer. And, because people think you go for hypnosis, to lose weight or stop smoking. Generally, that's the consensus, or maybe for pain management. But there's lots of applications. And one of the areas I love is performance anxiety or enhancement of performance, sports, actors, whatever. So this guy came in and he wanted to work on his golf game, and we did a few sessions and he got a hole in one.
Really?
Yeah. And I told this story of how that came to be, what I said with him, what I did, which I think if you're a practicing hypnotist, you might appreciate it. But even as a general reader, you get the sense of how this stuff works. I mean, what I was thinking, what people could walk away from, what are some of the takeaways from reading this book, say, for a coach, as well as a hypnotist, even just a person who's not even a professional anything, is to understand the power of suggestion, including auto-suggestion.
What's auto-suggestion? I mean, I know what auto-suggestion is. For the benefit of our listeners.
Auto-suggestion. He's a German fellow. No. No, it's the suggestions we make to ourselves.
While you're driving? A little joke.
Yes. That's auto-hypnosis, yes. Okay. While you're driving. But the understanding
self-hypnosis, the way you
understanding that even without putting ourselves like sitting there and going, I'm closing my eyes, I'm going to a place of maximum suggestibility. That's optimal if you want to really enhance it. But we're making suggestions to ourselves all the time about what we can or cannot do.
Okay.
Right? What is or is not possible. And this wonderful opening up to say, I don't know what's possible. Right? That could be. Maybe it's possible. It's possible that, and I didn't even, in that case, it was now the unconscious takes things literally often. And for this particular guy, who was a type A personality, he was an optometrist and very hardworking guy, and he approached his golf like he approached everything in life. He was a type A personality. And I said to him, hey, you go to play golf. You understand the word play? Because a lot of people work very hard at sports and music. We play music. We play like a kid plays. They don't work. You give them a ball, they're playing with the ball. Later on, it becomes serious. Like, I have to score more than the other person. So, yeah, of course, in golf, it's the opposite. You want to score less than the other person. No, I mean, it's a very interesting thing.
No, it's true. It's true.
And I used a story within a story, because I actually told that golfer the story. I read him a story from the Erickson book, My Voice Will Go With You, where he worked with a golfer who said, I shoot fine when I'm alone, but as soon as there's people around, my score goes way up. And Erickson hypnotized him, and the next time he entered a tournament, the story was that, he did very well, but after the 18th hole, he turned to go to the next hole, and the caddy said, what are you doing? And he said, well, that was just the first hole, because Erickson had hypnotized him that every hole he would think was the first hole.
Right.
Because he said our anxiety only builds up after we've started adding numbers.
Right.
Right at the beginning, anything is possible.
And he also said that you'll be completely alone on the golf course.
Yes, and then the guy turned around because he came out of the trance and said, "And where did all these people come from?"
Right.
So I told my optometrist this story, and after the first session, he called me up and I said, he said I was in a tournament. I said, "How'd you do?" He said, "Worse than usual, but I had more fun."
Huh?
I said, "That's very good." But we kept working. We did another session because I know, having fun was important, but he really also wanted to improve his golf game.
Yeah.
And so I sent him home and I was reading my book on Zen. And there was an essay called Not To, TWO.
Okay.
Right? Which is the essence of Zen is there's no duality. You and the club and the ball are one. Right?
Mm-hmm.
You within Zen archery, you and the arrow and the target are one. So I called them up at home and I said, "Here's your mantra, not two." He goes, "Okay." And then he called me up after the weekend. He said, "You'll never guess what happened." I'm like, "What?" I shot a hole in one. Like, "Oh, your unconscious took it literally."
Nice.
So that's a good example, a teaching example of how it wasn't specifically like, do you do this for every person that comes for golf? You've got to tailor it for who the person is.
Right.
But the idea of enjoying the game, right? And it could be the game of how to succeed in business without really trying.
Right.
It's if you see them all, like Robert S. DeRopp years ago wrote a book called The Master Game.
I'm not sure I know that book.
Yeah, but it was this idea that we step back and we see it all as a potential game.
Mm-hmm.
And you play the game and you play it to the best of your ability, but you remind yourself every now and then, this is a game.
Yeah.
The game of life.
Right, for sure.
The game of life. And I want to do as well in it as possible and get as many buildings on boardwalk as possible, and ultimately that bumper sticker, the person who dies with the most toys wins.
Yeah. That's the game I'm playing.
Yeah.
Hey, so what else can they take away from this? Just for the record, I loved the book. You have so many stories. You've been in this this business for quite some time, and there's lots of stories that anybody has when they're in the business for a long period of time. But you always have this sort of distinct, unique kind of impish approach to things that I really like.
Well, thank you. I'll take that as a compliment. My friend Dr. Louis Madrona, he said, that if you, I've written a delightfully playful book, and he says, "Don't be fooled. Beneath the silliness and the humor are pearls of wisdom worthy of the reader's contemplation and reflection." So, be a clown.
What he said,
right?
Yeah, no, exactly. That's what he said it better than. I'm glad you read that quote because it saved me having to try to think the right words. Because that's exactly right. There's a lot of wisdom in this. It's not just a fun, silly book. There's lots of wisdom. And one of the stories that I liked about this book, because just I used to work in a hospital. And I'm fascinated by, you doing pre-surgical hypnosis for clients, for patients that were there. And I had an operation of my own once using just hypnosis for anesthesia, no formal anesthesia, but a hernia operation using hypnosis that was self-administered, just by the way. I'm fascinated by the intersection of the body mind, the connection of the body mind. And you've got a story in there about warts and about how you can take warts away. And I've read about that, and I've done that actually successfully with clients of mine.
Yeah,
but I had a couple of warts, and I couldn't get rid of my own. So I was fascinated by
not everything works for every person in every situation, right? We know that.
Oh,
and you do the best you can, and like the old Indian said in Little Big Man, some days the magic works. So I'm always wanting my clients to get the best results. I want myself to get the best results. Sometimes it pans out differently. So going into it with an expectation of success, but also being prepared for we don't know what's going to happen when we work with a client. This was a situation. I used to work at a place in Sullivan County called the New Age Health Spa, and I met people there who would come in to hear my talk, and I'd see them the next day for a client, and then they'd ride off into the sunset and go back to New York. Mostly they were coming up from New York City or Long Island, but they'd say, well, how can I get in touch with you if I want to follow up? And I'd say, well, here's my number. I'm in Woodstock. Come and see me. But New Yorkers are not like that. They're like, well, here's my number. If you're coming to New York, call me. So after a while, I'm thinking the universe is giving me a sign. And I went and I got a place. I rented a place, and I go down twice a month. And I had a studio apartment on the Upper West Side. And this woman called and said, I don't know if you remember me. I did a session with you at the spa. And do you work with kids? And I said, sure. She said, my daughter is 11 and has warts. She has plantar warts on the base of the foot. And I said, bring her over. And she did, and was an adopted child. Both parents were social workers, just to give some context, and I said,
and further context is that she'd tried a bunch of different medical approaches.
Oh, yes. They had been to a bunch of doctors. Right. And I have a lovely little letter from her after the sessions that she wrote. It's a classic, and I've saved it. I put it in the book. But the mother asked her if she would try this, and she was willing, but not sure what it is. I mean, a lot of grown-ups don't know what it is. Kids are curious. But I said, after talking to her for a while and establishing rapport, and the mom was present, and I said, it's very good for stress. You know what stress is. Do you think your mom is stressed out? She goes, yeah. I said, I said, so how about if I do some hypnosis with your mom, and then you can just watch? And I thought that would make it safe. She'll see that her mom doesn't turn into a pumpkin or whatever, and so I did it. And this is also a classic Ericksonian way of teaching a naive client hypnosis, is have them watch you work with somebody else. Erickson would often use somebody who was an experienced hypnosis client. I didn't know with the mom, but I did know I had done one session with her. And apparently it had been successful enough that she was, bring her daughter. Yeah. So I did that. And then I said, so I'm not even going to do anything with you this session. Why don't you and your mom go home and practice based on what you saw me do with your mom, and come back in a couple of weeks? Because I was going in every 2 weeks. And they came back. And the second time I did a session with her. And in the session, I talked to her about, all the cells in your body. I said, you know this, you're a smart kid and you're doing science, they all need oxygen to stay alive. And the blood that flows around your body brings oxygen to all those cells. Now, you don't usually know how that happens. It's happening outside of your awareness, but it does it on its own. And that's a wonderful thing. But what if the blood with the oxygen didn't reach the cells of your warts? What do you think might happen? And then I went on and talked about something else. But I had given that idea. There's the mind-body connection. Did she really influence the flow of blood? Was it placebo? We don't know. We know that in the 100 years ago, they used to give a kid a quarter and say, I'm buying your warts from you. And the kid believed it. And the next day they'd have a quarter and the warts would be gone. So this sounds like shamanic witch doctor stuff. but it's the power of mind. That the warts are a funny, they're, are they a virus or a bacteria? What are they? They're sort of one of those in between things.
Yeah.
And obviously they do respond, even though yours didn't. You've used them with other people's warts. And so, that worked so well that by the end of the, I think it was third or fourth session, she wrote me this beautiful little letter that I've kept that said, to Peter, when I first came to see you, Peter, my feet were black and warty. They were a total mess. 2 exclamation points. Me and my mom had wanted to get rid of them so badly. I've probably been to almost all of the feet doctors in Manhattan. Drama, 11-year-olds. As you can probably guess, that none of them worked. Out of all the doctors, none of them worked. One doctor kept lying and saying, this will help, that will help, one more visit, that will cost extra. Does it hurt? If it does, the pain will go away later. Well, the pain did not go away, and the medicine kept stinging. So my parents brought me to see Peter the Hypnotist. I'm going to use that title from now on, Peter the Hypnotist. And we did some relaxation. That's what she thought of it as. That's how I felt it for her. Relaxation. And my warts kept shrinking and shrinking until my warts were gone. By the second session, they were almost totally gone. When the third session came around, the warts were totally gone. Thanks, Peter, 5 exclamation points. So this is a keeper. This is, nice to get paid. But stuff like this, when I'm like thinking, oh, I'm useless, I'm not helping anybody, and I pull something like that out, and I feel like, okay, I'm doing something of value in the world. So that's a story that gives people an understanding of how the unconscious may work in mind-body connection. You asked me something else that people might be able to take away who are not necessarily hypnotists, and the idea of an anchor.
Okay.
The idea of an anchor is a word that is used very specifically in the field of NLP to refer to a stimulus. It's like behavioral conditioning. It's a stimulus that through the senses, a touch, a smell, a sound, a taste, that is connected to a response.
Right. It's a typical example, of course, is Pavlov's dogs.
Pavlov's dogs, yes. Does the name Pavlov ring a bell? Yeah. So, and many anchors are established unconsciously. We don't realize that it's an anchor, right? What NLP gave us was the idea that you can establish consciously an anchor for a state of excellence, right? And it's called the anchor of excellence. And there's a drill. A lot of the chapters in here have at the end of them, and this was thanks to the suggestion of the wonderful person that helped me design this book and edit it and come up with the idea. She said, a lot of your chapters talk about doing something, challenging a belief system or working with one or establishing an anchor of excellence. Why don't you put a little 1 or 2 paragraph exercise at the end of each chapter in a box?
That's right. That's really good.
I said, that's brilliant. Thank you. Yeah. And so the anchor of excellence is one of the things I often do with my clients.
Beautiful.
And it's a circle. It's called the circle of excellence.
Right.
And you know it, right? You know it. It's where you ask them to think of a number of times in their life where they were in a peak performance state, in a state of excellence, say in humor, in nature, in sex or romance, in business,
in golf,
right, in sports, or athletics or dance or movement. And one by one, you have them call up that picture and that feeling and step into an imaginary circle. And like I use this, that's my example.
For the people who are listening, just in audio, it's grabbing.
Right. Oh, there's that. Okay, so I'm grabbing a spot in between my index finger and my thumb on my hand. and gripping it. It's one of the gates in acupuncture, and just applying light pressure. It should ideally be a movement or a touch that is not something that you ordinarily do. So you're marking it out to your body and mind. Oh, pay attention. Now I'm setting this up. And the initial process is called stacking anchors. That one after another, you're thinking of all these times when you're in these states of power, of wonder, of living life to its fullest, of feeling that you could, you could fly over tall buildings in a single bound, right? And you stick them all in there. And then, we all have days when we wake up feeling like, oh, it's a great day, and other days when we wake up on the wrong side of the bed, as the saying goes. And you think, oh, that's not good. I'm in a funk and I've got to go give an important presentation at work, or I've got to do something, I've got to go. And wouldn't it be nice if you had a switch that you had installed?
All right.
You could throw, and temporarily at least, I mean, you go into high gear.
Yeah, well, that's brilliant. Yes, the circle of excellence is one of those wonderful NLP techniques that's so simple to use and yet so effective. I learned it from Tony Robbins, back in the day, 1985.
Right.
Hey, Peter.
Yes, sir.
We're running out of time here a little bit, but before we go, I wanted you to tell the story about how this book came to pass. I know that there was an editor person from.
Oh yeah. So the first book, as I said, was written. This one, I had all these articles that I had written. The book was already kind of there,
right? But
the thought of putting it into, and I contacted the people who I'd been contributing these articles and said, can I have the right? They said, of course, we don't pay you for them. The least we can do is give you the right to republish them. So I said, and I will say reprinted with permission from. And then I do believe, like, the first person that came into my life, that sound healer from Puerto Rico, is an angel. Again, I believe we're guided to, at least that's one of my belief systems. I have guardian angels around.
Yeah,
I have good luck. I have good karma if I keep doing the right thing. So I put out the word. I thought I'm not well known enough. I know how the publishing business works. It's hard to get a contract. My belief system is, if you're not a well-known person, if you don't have a track record, right? If you're not famous from a TV show or a movie or some way, I'm not. I'm a big fish in a little pond. I'm famous in certain small circles, but not in the publishing world. So I thought, well, I'll self-publish. That's what people do. And I put out a request on our local Facebook community page. I'm looking for someone to walk me through the self-publishing process. And a person that I knew, and a local artist, said, well, here's a person that I think I've worked with a couple of times in the last 20 years on a couple of projects, and they're wonderful, and I highly recommend them. So I contacted this person who was in Oklahoma. And as we spoke, I said, oh, I've been in Oklahoma and in Stillwater 30 years ago. I had some really, powerful experiences. And she said, well, who do you know in Stillwater? And it turns out the person I knew, Dr. Scout Cloud Lee, had, in fact, she said, oh, I just helped her republish a couple of books. I'm like, oh, aha. Well, it's like the Geiger counter. You're getting clicking, you're getting warmer. And then she said, and I spent 20 years working for Council Oaks Books in the editing department. And I said, that's who publishes Beautiful Painted Arrows books. And she goes, oh, Joseph, who's one of the biggest influences in my life, a main shaman I've written about in this book. There's a chapter on him. And at that point, I said, this is meant to be. I'm supposed to work with you. And she turned out it was a huge blessing, because she designed this beautiful cover, came up with the idea of the exercises. The other thing she said was, you need snappy titles in your table of contents. I said, why is that? She said, people open a book after they look at the cover, the first thing they look at is the table of contents. That's going to help determine whether they buy your book or not.
Oh, so great. Now I got to rewrite my book.
Yeah. No, but I self-published it. She helped me get it on Amazon. It's on Amazon. People can find it under the title. It's also on my website if you want a signed copy.
What is your website, Peter?
My website is transonics.com. One word, TRANCE, same word, SONICS.com, transonics.com. And there's the guy who works on my website set it up. So as soon as you go there, there's a pop-up that says, would you like to buy Peter's new book?
Okay, cool. Yeah. And you get it signed? You sign it before you ship it out?
If they order it through my website, I will sign it before I send it out.
Cool.
If they order it through Amazon, they'll just get a copy from their Amazon stock. So I'm very happy about it. You know, it took 9 months from conception to publication. So I really feel like I had a pregnancy and I gave birth.
You birthed a book.
My first real book. The other one I'm still printing up 30 at a time at the local print shop and selling them. And that also is available on my website if people are interested in that. You know.
And we've talked about that in this podcast before, the Transonics. I love that book.
Thank you.
Really good. And I love this book too. This is so much fun. So, Peter, we could talk all day. Obviously, this is
we have.
Yes, we have. No, we should do it again sometime.
Time distortion, Doug. This is actually
for now.
Yes.
For now, we should probably say good night. So, thank you so much.
Okay.
For being here and for sharing your wisdom and your there's a playful wisdom to it.
Silliness. My silliness.
Your silliness.
Right.
All right. Hope to see you again real soon.
Yes. Adios.
Cheers. This has been the Essential Coaching Skills Podcast. Thank you for being here. It's a pleasure seeing you again. Hope to see you again real soon. Come back next week when we have another gripping and exciting episode of the Essential Coaching Skills Podcast. And if you want to, you can find out more about us, each and every one of us, at essentialcoachingskills.com. Thanks.